Why?
Don't say anything inappropriate. Just kidding. All right, I'm gonna admit everybody. Hello, everyone. As you are entering the room, welcome. If you wouldn't mind taking a second and just posting in the chat box where you're calling in from around the world, just so we can have a sense of who's in the room while we're waiting for everyone to come on, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Just in case you're not sure where you are in the Chart Your Course Professional Development, Branding, and Networking session, and we'll get started in just a minute. And for those just joining, if you wouldn't mind just popping in the chat box and letting us know where in the world you're joining from, that would be great to see. Here we go. Got a few places around the world there. Rochester, Seattle, Canterbury, Norway. A couple people from Norway. Very cool. Oh, we got a few more we're adding in now. Just a couple of housekeeping things while we're waiting for a few more people to join. We're going to be utilizing the chat function for you all to ask questions if you have questions about the technology or need something clarified, but also to answer questions as part of the session. So Allison, our awesome facilitator, who I'll introduce in a second, will be asking you all to respond in the chat box or possibly raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you so you can verbally respond. In the session, we'll also be utilizing breakout rooms to do some small group work. So please let us know if you have any issues as we move in and out of rooms. Again, if you're just joining us, if you could just put in the chat box where you're calling in from, that would be great to see. And with that, we'll kick it off. So my name is Sarah Benderitis. I'm the one who's been emailing you. I work here at OSA, and I'm the Director of Membership Program Development. And we are very excited to have you all joining us today for Chart Your Course, Professional Development, Branding, and Networking. Again, just a couple of housekeeping things for those that are joining us as we get started. We're going to be utilizing the chat box to answer questions, so please feel free to post in there where you're from and any questions you have. We'll be asking folks to raise their hand, and we'll unmute you so you can verbally answer and respond to some of the questions as we get asking them through the course of the training. We're also going to be using the breakout rooms for some small group work and coming back and forth between the main room and the small groups. And with that, I'm going to introduce our fabulous facilitator. So Allison French is a passionate about helping organizations and individuals make right connections to create harmony and success. As the managing director of Alto Solutions, she employs brains, science, and her approach to organizational change, communications, and leadership. An experienced and also excellent facilitator, training and coach, Allison has helped clients within education, government, and the private sectors for more than 20 years, facilitating strategic planning meetings, corporate retreats, and skill training workshops, as well as in-depth change, leadership, and team assessments and strategic communication campaigns. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Allison.
Great, thanks, Sarah, and hello to everybody here. I see more folks are still joining us. It's wonderful. I see a few familiar names from folks who joined us yesterday as well, so welcome back to those of you who are joining for the second day of the Professional Development Workshop. As Sarah mentioned, I've been working with OSA for a couple of years and doing several workshops for them, and I'm happy to work with you today to help you chart your course. So let me go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint here and get this sharing with everybody. I'm going to get that back to the beginning. Sorry about that. Let's go back to where we started from. So charting your course, professional development, branding, and networking. We're going to try to get through all of those things in the next 2 hours together. And what we want to try to achieve today is to bring intent into our professional development and chart that course to meet your specific objectives. So we're really going to get very specific to what you want to accomplish. And I'm going to pause here for a moment and remind folks that there is a handout. And I think Sarah can probably put that, or maybe already has, put the link into the chat. There's a handout here, Chart Your Course. And it's got a couple of different pages that we're going to go through, and that is a really helpful tool to have as you go through today. So I'm going to give everybody just a moment while I'm doing the introduction to make sure you have a copy of that, either electronically or printed out, because we are going to use that in our session. And one thing I will say to introduce this is that, 2 hours may seem like a long time on a webinar, but it also is going to go pretty quickly. And the tools that we're going to use today are not going to be 100% completed when you log off in 2 hours from now. It's the beginnings. It's to start to really put some thought and intent and intention into what you want to do and what you want to achieve. So I think that that's something, it was a starting point for you and an opportunity to take just a few hours out of your day to really think about it, because a lot of time we just go through day to day and we are getting things done and we're busy and we're fighting all the fires, but we're not really thinking about ourselves and where we want to be and where we want to go. And so that's what we're hoping to accomplish today. So we want to really focus on intent and intentionality. Also going to give you some key steps to become a more effective networker, give you opportunities to learn and practice those, and to understand what it means to have a personal brand and start to develop one that will guide your efforts. Sarah, are there any questions in the chat? I see it blinking, but I'm not sure if there's any questions before we get going.
No, we're all set. Folks are just introducing where they're from. And if you didn't notice, I did put a link in the chat box. So in case you did not receive the handouts in your confirmation email, there is a link there and you can directly download them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. So let me kick off with a little bit of a story from my own personal experience. And this is a fairly recognizable site to anybody, I'd say within or probably outside the US. Does anybody recognize where? No, this is going to get confusing because you're all typing in where you're from. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say that this is Las Vegas, Nevada. For those of you who haven't seen a picture like this before, it's pretty iconic. And the reason I share this picture, not just because it's kind of bright and exciting, but to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I was able to think about my professional development and incorporate intent into what I was doing. So I have my own company, Alto Solutions. I've had that since 2014. But before that, I was a consultant with Deloitte, which a lot of folks probably recognize the name Deloitte. And I was working in human capital consulting, working a lot with organizational change management, which I really loved. But I started to develop this real interest in doing training and learning development and talent development. And I wasn't really sure where to go with it. The projects that I was on were very organizational change focused, and it's not that I didn't like them, but I really had this kind of nipping in my heart and in my brain of what I really wanted to do, what I really started to love. I had an opportunity to do an onboarding with some new consultants, and I got a taste of it and I wanted to do more. And so I was trying to figure out how to do that. Now, Deloitte now has its own university, Deloitte University in Texas, but this happened prior to when Deloitte University was stood up. I was very fortunate that I was working for Deloitte when they stood up the university. But when I first started to feel these initial rumblings of wanting to do more in the training area, it wasn't built yet. And so I had to figure out, well, how am I going to get that experience and learn more and be able to branch out a little bit? And I actually learned through a friend of mine, and coincidentally, this friend of mine was someone I had met in a training class, a facilitation training class of all things. So that was sort of interesting. And she had moved into the learning and development space within Deloitte. So she was in charge of a lot of our learning and development. So besides being a friend, I would lean on her a little bit to say, you know, hey, here are some of the things I'm interested in. Do you have some suggestions? Do you have some tips? How did you learn how to do this? And one of the things that happened in the course of our conversation is she actually shared with me that there was some money in the budget for training, but it hadn't been widely publicized. And so she said to me, look, you know, we can make a case for you to do this. I can help you, but find something, identify something that you think would benefit where you want to go, and we'll make a case for it together. And so I identified a learning opportunity through the Association for Talent Development. Back then it was actually ASTD, now ATD, was very specific to improving my own skills in being a trainer. And she helped me craft a note to my managing partner to make the case for going. And what ended up happening was that the powers that be did approve my request, with the caveat that when I came back, I was to do a teach back, a train the trainer sort of kind of thing for the people in my group to help them learn a little bit more. And of course I said, that's wonderful. So I ended up getting it's a win-win situation. I ended up getting a trip to Vegas to go to this class. It was being offered in Las Vegas. It was an excellent class. And then I actually got to reinforce my learning when I came back by doing the teach back with my group. So the whole point here isn't, you know, to get a free trip to Vegas, especially these days when maybe we're not traveling as much. The point is, when we set an intention, we're more likely to be proactive and to make choices that support that intention. And so that sets the stage for what we want to do here today. So let's talk about how we are going to intentionally set and use professional development goals to advance your career. So the first thing you want to take a look at, and some of us forget about this sometimes, but the first thing you want to look at is, where are you starting from? What's your starting point? Where are you in your professional journey? In my case, I was at a mid-manager level myself, but I wasn't necessarily at that level for the kinds of things I wanted to be doing. So there were sort of two starting points for me. I was at a certain place in my career, but in terms of the skills I wanted to be learning and where I wanted to shift to, I was maybe more of an advanced beginner kind of a situation. I had a little bit of work in that area, but not as much as I had had. So the years of experience total were one thing, and then the years of experience doing what I wanted to do were another. So I had to take both of those into consideration. So that all leads you to where you are today and to what is your starting point. Then, after you figure that out, well, where are you going? What are those professional goals? Is this something that you want to stay in the same track and get a promotion? Do you want to shift tracks? Do you want to make a change from one functional area that you're in to another functional area? Are you looking to be a thought leader or an expert in your field? What are the goals that you can identify, both short-term and long-term? And why do you want to get there? And that why becomes important as well. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk about that more a little bit later on. But these goals are going to look different for everybody, and goals really should have personal meaning for you. And only you know the value that they have to you and what motivation you're going to have to achieve them. So then we're setting our professional goals. Now we need to figure out, what do we have in our toolbox? Tools and information. What do you have access to? Who are the people in your network that can help you? In my case, it was my friend Mary Lou, who worked in learning and development. What else? I had access to a potential conference that I could go to. I had to make the case for going, but I did that. I was able to identify that. In that situation, it was a physical conference that I went to. In these days, it might be something virtual that you can identify. What about access to mentors in your network, peer groups? What about online communities? What about webinars you could attend, or books you could read, or articles that might have information that, you know, something in the Harvard Business Review or something in your field? What publications do you subscribe to? What groups are you a part of? There's a lot of value in looking at the tools and information that you have access to, knowing what exists, and then knowing what else you need is going to be really important to figure out where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And I want to talk for a moment a little bit about, how do you recognize value? Because everybody assesses this in a different way, and recognizing what's of value to you can really point you in the right direction for your professional goals. because it means something different to everybody, some people might really value a one-on-one networking opportunity, whether it's, you know, over a cup of coffee, socially distanced, whether it's a phone call or a FaceTime meeting. Some folks might recognize attending a conference as having a lot of value, whether it's a virtual or in-person conference. Some people may value setting aside 30 minutes a day to read books or articles. Because value is personal, only you can determine what activities bring the most value to you. So think about how you recognize value. Then think about delivery mode. Now, these days, we're a little bit shoehorned into the delivery mode of virtual. There's not as many opportunities to do face-to-face as there were. But at some point, we're going to go back to having opportunities to go face-to-face. And even now, I know that personally, I've made opportunities to meet someone socially distant outdoors over lunch, over coffee, and have those networking meetings. I've had some of those opportunities. I've also been able to shift a little bit in my thinking where I love being in person. I love getting up in front of a group of people and doing this workshop in person, but I can't. So how do I sort of shift my mental model to say, okay, I'm going to be intentional about, you know, how I deliver it and how I think it will be received virtually, which is why in a few minutes we're going to go into a breakout room and give you the opportunity to process some of this and talk about some of this. So thinking about that delivery mode for yourself. And then finally, your budget, something you do want to consider, whether it's your budget, whether it's your organization's budget. Some things, you know, are very inexpensive or free, like having a cup of coffee with someone, you know, that might be a mentor. Conferences could be a little bit more expensive. What is the funding that you have to be able to select the right professional development opportunity? And then finally, a timeline. And the last piece you want to think about here is how long is it going to take you to achieve your short-term goals, your long-term goals? How and when do you plug in the various points of tools and information that you've identified? Will you be able to get started right away, or are there some other things you need to do first to get yourself ready? Do you need to wait for a conference or for a book to come out before you get started on this? You want to think realistically about timelines, but you also don't want them to hinder you. You don't want to look at something and say, oh, this isn't happening for 2 years. I need to put everything on hold. So thinking about maybe how you could chunk it down a little bit. Is there something else you could do? Is there a short-term goal that you can put in and accomplish? What do you need to do to get started? So I'm going to go ahead and put these things. Oh, something kind of wacky happened. I'm sorry about that. My slides look a little weird there. But these are the 4 questions that were on the previous slide. And I've put a couple of other points underneath them. And I've talked about them verbally, but I wanted you to see them on the slide as well. So when you think about your starting point, where are you in your journey? What skills and knowledge do you have right now? What are your professional goals, short-term, long-term, and why are they important to you? The tools and information that you have, what's available, how do you determine what's valuable? And your timeline. How long do you need to achieve your various goals, and what goals do you want to try to tackle first? So these are some things to be thinking about. And what we're going to do right now is an activity. I'm going to ask you in your workbook to turn to page 2, and you'll see a template for a professional development plan. And at the top, you'll see what is your starting point, and then you'll see 3 columns for your professional goals, your tools and your resources, and your timeline. You are not going to fill everything in right now. This is a starting point. So what I'd like for everyone to do, and I'm going to pause too and see if you have some questions, but I'm going to give everybody about 5 minutes to work on this individually. And then we're going to put you in groups of 4. And in your groups of 4, I'm going to ask each person to pick one area that they need a little bit more help with. Is it your starting point? Is it the short and long-term goals? Is it the tools and information? Or is it the timeline? Pick one of these questions that you think you need some help with and use your group to get a little bit of feedback. Bounce some ideas off your group. So this will really help you to kind of form the basis of your personal professional development plan. So let me pause for a moment, see if we have questions about this activity or about the professional development planning process, and then we'll go into our activity. So Sarah, are there questions in the chat we need to address?
Not that I can see. Folks have just been introducing where they are in the world and letting us know that information. I did put the link to the handouts in there if anyone is looking for it, and I'll also put the prompts in the chat box as we go into groups so you can see it there as well.
Okay. Oh, super. Thank you. I saw someone private chatted about the symbols in the worksheet, and they're just design elements. They actually, I'm going to go back. If you look here on this slide, you'll see that the starting point has just a couple of little design elements there, and we just reuse them in the worksheet. That's all, just to kind of keep it interesting. So they don't mean anything per se, other than they're icons that sort of represent what each of these things are: starting point, goals, tools, and timeline. All right, so it's about 1/4 the hour right now. I'm going to give everybody about 5 minutes on your own, silently. Just jot down some thoughts in any of these boxes, any and all of them. I'm going to put this one back up so you can see the prompts, and just jot down a few ideas. And then in about 5 minutes, we'll send you off into breakout rooms to see if you can get some assistance from your peers. And feel free to chat in questions as you're doing this if you have any questions. We'll take about 2 more minutes individually, and then we'll send you into breakouts. Question in the chat about how long should the answers be, and that is completely up to you. This is your professional development plan, so whatever you think will help you is what the answer should be. So I know that's maybe a little bit vague, but everyone's going to answer these differently. We can take about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to give you about 15 minutes in a breakout so that you can pick one of these areas that maybe you want to get some feedback on, and you'll get a chance to bounce this around with your teammates in the breakout group. So make sure that you allocate enough time for each of the 4 people in your group to bring up their challenge and get some feedback in the 15 minutes that you've got. Sarah, do you want to go ahead and send them into breakouts?
Yes, I will right now. Sorry, you caught me typing in the chat of what we were doing. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, just sent that message. Let me put the groups together and I will send you all into groups. Okay. You should be all getting an invite to go to a room right now.
It looks like we have ample folks on the breakout at least, so
Yeah.
if not everybody, but that's okay. That's what happened yesterday too, I think.
Just double checking to make sure we don't have any rooms that look like they're full, but actually only have one person in them.
Oh, right. I remember that happened too.
Okay, they look pretty good. Hi, Drew. I don't know if you can unmute yourself or not.
How you doing?
There you go. I was saying, I probably because you're the co-host, I know sometimes I've gotten stuck where I've muted like a participant and then they couldn't do anything with the thing again. It's like, oops, sorry. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Just trying to keep my eye on people that are joining and waiting, admitting them. So
Yeah. I'm gonna assign this person. There we go. Okay. All right, I think we got everybody.
Okay.
Keep getting 1 or 2 people added.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
So we'll just keep adding them in as they jump in. So for those that might be in this main room, we should have sent you an invite to the breakout room. So if you'll accept that, you can head into a breakout room and then talk about one of the 4 areas that you want to work on a little bit more, and you can talk with your group on that. So just go ahead and accept the invite. And for those that want to stay in the main room, that's fine. We're just going to be chatting amongst ourselves about how to keep going on the webinar, and everyone else will be doing still group work.
Yeah, at this point, probably we probably have about 11 more minutes in the breakout rooms. So about 10 more minutes at this point. So about 3:35 will bring everybody back in. That'll keep us right on track.
I'm sorry, what time did you say? 3 what?
3:35 is when we'll bring
3:35.
everybody back. So
Got it.
yeah, so at in 5 minutes, we'll send a 5-minute.
Gotcha. Someone has asked for help in a breakout room, so I'm going to disappear for a second.
Okie doke.
Okay.
Well, Sarah, let's do a 5-minute message in just a couple of seconds.
Sure, will do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm. Allison, just real quick before we ask
Yeah.
people to raise their hands when they come back,
Mhm.
can you look on your participant view screen? Do they
Yeah.
click on, is there something at the bottom that says raise hand, or do they have to click on participants and then raise hand?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a little bit complicated. You have to click, if you want them to actually do the raise hand icon, you have to click on participants and then click raise hand. So you can see I just raised mine.
Got it.
I
Okay.
just lowered mine. So they have to, there's no place for them to do that, I don't think. Because even if you click the 3 bars, you just get chat or pin video. So you have to click on participants, raise hand. So yeah, if I can let them know that when they come, or you can either way, we can let them know that.
Yeah, I'll post it in the chat box, but it'll probably be good for you to mention it out loud too.
Yep, good idea. Yeah, and in about a minute, just send the 1-minute warning.
Will do. Okay, I just gave them the 60-second close the room.
Great. All right.
So they should be coming back in just a minute or so.
Cool. Thank you. It looks like people are coming back in. Great. Okay. Yep. Looks like folks are coming back into the main room. And I know that 15 minutes is certainly not enough time to develop your personal development plan. But I do hope that you got something out of talking with your colleagues. I do find that sometimes if you hit a roadblock, it's helpful to have people that you can bat it around with and talk through some challenges. And so what we want to do is just get a couple of folks to share their experience in the breakouts or any of the challenges that maybe they had that they discussed, or any aha moments that they got. And if you want to share, what you'll need to do is go to where it says participants at the bottom of your screen. Click on that, and then you'll see an option to raise your hand. There's a little icon that'll show you raising your hand. So if you click on participants and raise hand, that will signal to Sarah to take you off mute, and then you can share with us a takeaway. You're also welcome to put it in the chat box if there's something that this helped you with, or remaining questions that you have. Would like to hear from maybe 3 or 4 people and hear what their experience was.
Great, we have Sean. Sean, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, thank you,
Hi,
Sarah.
Sean.
Okay, well, our group talked mainly about the subject of networking, and that we all seem to resonate with the fact that we know networking is a good thing, not just because it's a long word, but because it's a good thing for us. And we'd really like to make it an effective tool for us in our professional development. We especially like the idea of harnessing the geometric progression of talking to somebody and then talking to somebody else, and so on and so forth. But we all feel pretty uncomfortable doing it. We're most comfortable when we meet people that are in the same situation as us, whether it's a certain field of work or they're still a student and we're a student, which of course means we're not getting out of the so-called comfort zone and probably doing the most effective networking. We also recognize, being not totally hopeless socially, that we know how to start a conversation, but what we'd like to do is know how to make that go somewhere to help our careers, in a professional development sense, in an opportunity sense. I mean, many of us, I think, rightly so, view networking as a tool for finding new opportunities and work, but we don't feel like we're as good at it as we'd like to be.
Well, Sean, thank you for bringing that up. You've teed things up perfectly for the second half of this workshop. So we are going to spend a bit of time on networking, some tips around networking. If we had more time, or if we were in person, I've got a lot more tools and tricks to to practice networking techniques. But I think I'm hoping that the rest of this workshop today, you'll get some things out of it, and we're gonna tee up networking as part of sort of a broader piece of the plan. So I think you're already a little bit cued into that. So thanks for bringing that up, and stay tuned. We'll be getting to that shortly.
If anyone else would like to answer, feel free to raise your hand, or you could put something in the chat box as well.
If anything besides networking came up, any other challenges that you're struggling with, or ways that your team helped you think through them when you got into the breakouts, that would be lovely to hear.
Great, and I apologize if I'm going to mispronounce your name, but I'm going to try. Rahu, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah. So I spoke to a person in the group who is very more experienced than I am. So this journey from academia to industry and to a startup. So I'm currently a master's student in optics and photonics, and I just finished my internship, and I'm not really sure whether I want to pursue in the same direction. Change my topic of research or work, and the challenges I face now are to find a master thesis I really like, and to work in an industry of my choice. So the tools I currently have are the access to university resources and papers and publications. But the challenge for me is to pick the one which would suit me in the right way, and to whether decide to stay in the academic world or to go to the industry. So that's the challenge which I still do not have a lot of answers to.
And thank you for sharing that, and certainly a journey as well. And when we go into the next segment of this, we're going to talk a little bit about figuring out that's you've talked a little bit about your starting point, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into what that all means and the why around that, and that may help you figure out where you want to go and how you're going to get there by figuring out the what and the why first. So hopefully we'll get to a little bit of that might help you out in your journey. I'm going to put one slide up before we move into this next piece on reviewing and updating your professional development plan. Clearly, you're still in the process of putting it together and refining it, but here are some suggestions and ideas on how and when you would review and update it, because a lot of times, and I'm actually going to start on the right-hand column when I'm looking at it, on the right-hand side here, the how to update it and review it, because a lot of it is what Rahu you just said about what are your goals, where do you want to be, taking a really honest and potentially vulnerable look at your goals and understanding where you want to be and where you are, and understanding what your tools and resources are, what you have access to right now, what you might not have access to, and how you would need to get that. How do you engage your network? And really having things in writing helps a lot, and that's why I provide the templates for you, and you're welcome to download extra copies and use them as time goes on, because I think it's really important to see it in writing, because sometimes once you write it down, you say, oh, maybe I need to tweak it a little or change it a little. When do you want to do this? You can do this in conjunction with an annual review. If you're in a workplace that has an annual review cycle, you could set aside some of your own time periodically. You could set a schedule. You could have a time where you reflect on your personal goals, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whatever works for you. This would be a good time to bring out the professional development plan and take another look at it. Or when you're making some life changes, you know, if you're changing jobs, if you've received a promotion, if you're going from a, you know, a sort of a worker bee to a manager, and now you're managing people and not just product, you know, that's considered a life change. Are things still aligned, you know, with your development plan? So those are some things to be thinking about as far as how and when to update the plan. And it all goes hand in hand with this idea of really becoming a great networker. And recently, and this goes a little bit to what Sean was talking about, I actually heard a colleague who is a networking speaker cite the results of a survey that revealed that only 24% of respondents said they felt like they knew how to network really well. And only 6% had a specific networking game plan. So what I'd like to do for the rest of the day is to walk you through 5 steps that I consider key in becoming what I call a networker extraordinaire. And it ties back to your professional and personal development plan. And I want to spend a lot of time on number 2, which is the development of your personal brand. But I do want to talk about networking and reframe it a little bit for you. So the steps that we're going to walk through are establishing your personal mission and vision, developing your brand, devising your plan, honing your skills, and then follow up and follow through. But when we think about networking and what is networking and maybe why we don't love networking, I was reading a Harvard Business Review article, and they offered this definition of networking: the unpleasant task of trading favors with strangers. That sounds awful to me, but is that what networking really is? So today what I want to do the rest of the afternoon is to, or the rest of the session, not afternoon for everybody, of course, just explore this different context that will set you up more successfully for success. If you look in a dictionary under networking, the definition is the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contracts. And I think that's actually a little bit more on the mark. So these 5 steps help you sort of think holistically about your networking strategy rather than just jumping straight to focusing on the skills that you would use for interacting with others. So we're going to focus on how do we use that precious time we have wisely in networking. So I want to start with mission and vision. And we usually think of mission and vision in terms of an organization. Mission describes the purpose of an organization. It answers the question, why does my organization exist? And vision describes what the organization would like to accomplish in the future. It answers the question, where does the organization want to go? Southwest Airlines is an excellent example of a corporate mission and vision. And anyone who's flown Southwest knows that their employees really live this, you know, this mission and vision that you see here on the screen. It's what makes them successful. You know, they really do deliver a sense of warmth and friendliness, and they're cracking jokes and they're helping you with a really friendly demeanor, and it's contributing to where they want to go. But we're not talking about organizations here. We're talking about people. We're talking about you and what makes you you as a person. But the reason I include this as our first step is because establishing a personal mission and vision can help you become more successful in networking, because it provides a guidepost for where you want to focus your attention. So, you know, what's the one thing that we don't have a lot of? We don't have a lot of time. And so if you're clear on where you want to go, you can be a lot more directed as a networker. You can be a lot more focused in how you spend your valuable time. So has anyone ever heard of, and I guess you can probably, if I, you know, do a little show of hands in the box there, Simon Sinek. He's a leadership expert. You can see him up here in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. He developed this concept called the golden circle. And he talks about this as starting with why. So I'm going to play a video for you. It's about 5 minutes, and it's him at a TED Talk talking about this idea of the golden circle and starting with why. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why that's also relevant to you in your networking and professional development. So let me get to that real quick and share my screen. Second.
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. When we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right, because the part of the brain that controls decision making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal?
All right. Get my slides back up here. Okay, so this is the same. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. We have something playing in the background. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. All right. Sharing my screen again. Okay, hopefully that's working. Okay. Wonders of technology. So, golden circle, starting with why. This is the same for you. This is the same for networking. You have a goal, you have a mission, you have a reason to network. You want to start with your why to guide your efforts. So let me give you an example from my experience. And my personal vision is to achieve the optimal balance by doing the most meaningful and profitable work while maximizing my free time for myself and my family. Am I there right now? Getting there, but my vision is to be able to do that, to have this balance, to do the work that's meaningful to me, to really maximize my time, to be able to share these kinds of things with you on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, my why is being able to do the work I love, help people make connections, and also be there for my family when they need me. So I want you to take your worksheet for a moment and just jot down a few ideas. I'm not going to give you a ton of time. This is just really top of mind, whatever first comes to you. No one expects you to write a full personal mission and vision, but on the third page, you have a space for your personal mission and or vision. Just jot down a couple of quick ideas. What comes to you from hearing this, from seeing this? What is your purpose? Where do you want to go? What is your purpose? Is your mission? Where do you want to go? Is your vision? Starting with your why on page 3 of your worksheet. Take a couple of minutes. This is not your final version. It's just going to help you to think about ones that you do want to finalize, something that resonates with who you are and where you want to go. So write down just a couple of quick thoughts on that, because that's going to set us up for our next activity in personal branding. So take just about 1 minute, jot down a couple of quick thoughts. Okay, hopefully you got a couple of things down on paper. You can always come back to this later. You will come back to this later, I'm sure. And now what you're seeing on the screen are some logos. And what I'd like you to do is in the chat, pick one of these logos or brands and tell me what comes to mind when you see these logos. Not the name of the company, but what does it evoke for you? There's a whole bunch of them in here. So if you recognize one, type it into the chat and say, you know, what comes to mind when you see a particular logo in this collage?
Got coffee.
I've had coffee. So I'm guessing that the coffee is probably because of the Starbucks logo. I'm assuming. Maybe put the brand as well, so I know which one you're talking about. I'm making an educated guess that that one is Starbucks. What else? Yes, Starbucks. I figured it probably wasn't. Well, you know, Coca-Cola maybe makes coffee. I don't know. All right, optical lenses is which one that you're seeing? Microscopes for Nikon, maybe. Work, Google. Okay, Google, Apple. Ah, Samsung, high tech. Just do it, Nike. Yeah, we came up with the slogan as well. Wonderful tools with, here we go. Good, good. Wonderful tools with a great look and feel and lasting value. And that one is Nikon, not Apple. Interesting. Okay. And everyone has a different perception of brands, of course. That's also based not just on the logos, but on your experience with the brands. So in some cases, people are seeing, obsolete Yahoo. Yeah. Some people are seeing what the product is. Some people are seeing some things that the product represents, like value or enticing and inviting, or exciting in some way, or tasty, great fries and burgers, McDonald's, if you like burgers. I think everyone always says McDonald's fries are the best, you know. So there's a lot of things that come to you that are connoted by these different logos and these different brands, and everyone's going to have a little bit of a different view on what these brands may or may not mean to you. The brand is essentially a name, a term, a design, a symbol, any other feature that identifies one seller's goods or service as distinct from another seller's. And brand can apply to you as well. So when we talk about personal brand, what do we mean? So when we talk about personal brand, we really talk about what is your unique promise of value? What makes you unique? What makes you different from others in your field, others in your company, others at your university? What is your personal brand? What do we mean by when we say personal brand? And it's interesting how so many different things can define your personal brand. These adjectives are one part of the picture. How you present yourself, how you dress, how you look, how you show up, how you talk, the gestures that you use, they can all be part of your personal brand. Your name can be part of your personal brand. I have a colleague who I knew her for many, many years as Pam. And one day she decided that Pam didn't fit her brand and she was going by her middle name. And now she goes by Jill, and she's rebranded her whole company and her whole image to be Jill, which was her middle name, is her middle name. And it's taken me a very long time to embrace that because I've known her for years as Pam, but for new folks meeting her, she's Jill. She's the Jill brand, and to her, Jill means something different than Pam in her mind, and she's trying to capitalize on that. She is also a small business owner. So what I want you to be doing is to be thinking a little bit about your brand. What is your brand? And I have a tool for you in the packet. It starts on page 3, but the real bulk of it is on page 4. There is a list of words. And I want you to take, and again, this is very quickly top of mind, what resonates with you first. I want you to circle the 5 words that resonate with you the most as representing you and your brand. And if there's not 5, or you want to add a word, feel free to add a word that you think represents you and your brand. So I want you to do that. And then after you do that, there's a little open text box right underneath the chart on page 4, and it says brand value statement. And in that brand value statement, I want you to think about, and again, this is a first draft, this is not final, jot down what a personal brand statement could be for you. And there are some examples given to you on page 3. So for example, I take a human-centered approach to developing clear, meaningful communications. This might be someone who's a communications professional. It's very important for them to have clarity, but they're also very people-focused. That's their brand. That's the first example on your worksheet on page 3. Another one is I bring calm and professionalism to challenging situations. I don't know exactly what this person does, but they do something that probably puts them in challenging situations often. So it's important to them that they bring calm and professionalism into those. And the third example is I create authentic, inspiring experiences for like-minded professionals. And this is someone who's, maybe they're a trainer, maybe they're a facilitator, maybe they're an event planner, I'm not really sure, but they have this brand where it's authentic, it's inspiring, and it's going to resonate with people who are in a similar space. For me personally, my brand is that I am passionate about helping people make the right connections to achieve success in a dynamic environment. And you probably heard some of those words even in Sarah's introduction of me. I use them all the time. I use them in my bio. I use them in my website, because it's really important for me to be in a very dynamic environment, but to help people connect and be successful. So those are some examples to think about. So I want you to take a few moments now as an individual and spend about 5 minutes circling your 5 words and jotting down some ideas of what a brand value statement might be for you. Feel free to chat in questions if you have them, and then we're going to go into breakouts and discuss these with each other. And again, they don't have to be final, it's the process that's important. I'll give everybody about 1 more minute. All right, so we are going to put you in breakouts of 3 this time to give you even a little more personalized experience. We're going to give you 10 minutes this time, so in 3 groups of 3, hopefully that will be enough time. You can spend about 3 minutes per person. And here are some things you might want to discuss. You don't have to discuss all 4 of them, but what traits did you pick and why? You might want to share your brand value statement, or you might want to say, this is what I'm working on and I'm not quite sure how to take it to the next level. Or you might just want to talk about what is the unique value you can offer when working with others. So for each person in these triads, you're going to have an opportunity to maybe even brag a little bit about yourself. That might not feel comfortable to you, but you're in a safe space. You're only 3 people in a group. So share some of the traits you picked, what they mean to you, or share your value statement, or get some help from the others, or share the unique value that you can offer. So we're going to give you 10 minutes. It's about 5 after the hour. So we're going to give you until 1/4 to work in breakout groups of about 3 people each. Some may have 4, most will have 3. And we're going to send you off into breakouts now. If you have questions, please let us know and we'll pop in and help you out. Hey, Sarah.
Yep.
You think we should send, since I'm assuming they're in mostly triads, but do you think we should send something out that says, you know, if you haven't done so, switch to the next person or something like that, just to keep them
Yeah.
on track?
I'll send something to in just a second.
All right,
Just
yeah.
making sure there's not a lonely person sitting in one room that I've missed somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Just because we gave them less time on this one. It's hard to know how it's going in the breakout, so.
Yeah.
But there's just too many to pop in.
That is true. They'll have decent numbers in them though, so there's a couple that have 4, but most of them have 3. So
Oh, good. Yeah. The foursies will have to be quick, but. There's so much in this that I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I don't want to. We could do that. We could do a whole day on this.
mm-hmm.
Although I think that would be extremely difficult virtually. You know, it's 2 hours is about the most. You know, maybe 2.5, and beyond that, it's kind of tough, especially if they've been doing other things all day online.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think if we were to do something that was longer, it would be broken out into many like
Yep.
2-hour chunks kind of
Modules,
thing.
yeah, we'd have to do module. We could do that. So if that's a thought for the future. If there are some other things we want to do, we could do, you know, modules.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, had someone asked me today to break an hour-long session into 3 20-minute modules. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like, you sure they can pay attention for an hour? Can they? But it's okay. Oh, my kids are home. I hear the elephant.
Hanaro texted me or sent me a message on my phone, said I'm on mute, but I agree with you guys.
I'm just gonna make sure my door is closed here.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Look at you on top of it. Awesome. Top of the broadcast message.
Trying.
All right. 2 more minutes.
Okay, I'll give my 2-minute warning.
In about a minute, let's just bring them back.
Okay. Okay, I think most people are back.
Great. Well, I hope, I know, again, not enough time to really dig in too deeply, but did anyone get any good feedback or have questions that they want to ask at this point about personal brand, how to put a personal brand together, why you would pick what you would pick, or why you'd even do this in the first place? Does anybody have questions or want to share anything that came out of your group discussion? And you can raise your hand or chat it in. I think someone's coming off mute. Did you want to share something?
Yeah, so I did have a different group this time. So last time there were professionals who were working in the field. So, but this time it was mostly students and students working in a lab, if I have to be more specific.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more on the lines of being adaptive, being accurate, and doing things in an organized way, because in a lab environment, you need to be methodical and you need to follow a certain number of rules to make sure everybody's safe and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the question I had is about the brand statement which you asked us to write. Uh, I mean, yeah, the previous slide you just showed us some really, really popular brands across the globe, and why they are famous for the products and the services they provide. But as an individual, every individual is going to put their best foot forward. So I actually didn't understand how exactly one writes a statement and at the same time not feel shy or a little too nervous to put a statement out. That's my question.
No, that's a great question. And of course, we're not products, we're human beings, and everyone's going to, those words that are on the page are typically words that describe people, not products. And the reason I asked you to think about, the words that resonate most with you are, typically those are words that you either feel like describe you now or that you aspire to. And I see something in the chat as well that there's, sort of a big step from the chosen traits to an actual brand statement. And that may be because some of them could be aspirational traits, and that's okay too. Because if it's something that you say, I am working on this area, but this is what I want to be known for, then that's certainly something that can guide your professional development as well. Oh, okay, yeah. So in your group, I'm looking at the chat here. Sure. But it can feel very vulnerable to pick these traits, and apply them to yourself as if you were promoting yourself, because essentially you are promoting yourself, and not everybody is comfortable with that. But at the end of the day, I think that it's really important to be able to put into sort of a short phrase who you are and what you're all about. It's going to make it easier in your networking. And it's almost like that elevator speech. An elevator speech might tell people what you do, but doesn't necessarily tell people who you are. And so the personal brand is the elevator speech of who you are, essentially. And I see in the chat too, it's helpful to think of a personal brand as a single sentence recommendation to yourself. Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's a very pithy, it's very just, you know, what are some of the key things that you stand for, that apply to you? It's not easy either. I mean, this is certainly something, an activity that I'm asking you to do a lot of, you know, real introspection in a very short amount of time virtually. Very challenging to do. So this is really just scratching the surface of some things you may want to think about as you move forward, as you think about your overall mission and vision. You know, who are you? What is it you want to accomplish? What do you represent? Those kinds of things. And this will evolve over time. You know, those of you who are students now, it may change a little bit, or you may find that some of the values stay the same, but how they show up for you may change in a different environment. So you may still value loyalty, and you may be a very loyal person, but it may show up differently if you are a student working for a professor versus an individual working at a company. So any other, I mean, and I hope that's helpful. I know that, you know, it's not a cut and dried answer, but none of these are. These all really involve a lot of thinking about yourself.
Great. I'm going to unmute Jason.
Great.
Thank you. I did see there's a point in the chat. So we talked in our group, we were talking about how you could have a personal brand and a professional brand, and how these two statements would be different. But we did at the end talk about how your personal brand and your professional brand, we thought, had to be like consistent. Because I think both of those things kind of answer that like why question that we've talked about earlier.
Yeah, Jason, that's an excellent point. That I think they'll be slightly different, but they will be consistent and connected. And that's a really good litmus test as well, because you as a person, you know who you are, you have a personal mission and vision in your life. And if your personal brand is one thing, and you're in a situation where you feel like your professional brand has to be something else, then there's a misalignment there. And you need to figure out how to resolve that misalignment. Do you need a different position? Do you need a different role? Do you need to go to a different organization? I've definitely found that for myself, that I've been in places, or even just in roles, where it's just not a good match for who I am, for my why, for what I want to do, for how I present myself. And I've had to figure that out, because something's not quite right. Like Simon Sinek said, there's this gut reaction of something's not quite right, but we can't really put our finger on it. And it's because that why isn't aligned. So I think that's an excellent point. And it can change and shift, but there's going to be continuity over the course of your life. You are who you are, and there are things that you're going to value. And if the things that you're doing professionally don't match up with what you value and who you are, then that's not a good fit. You need to think about what to do about that. So let's shift a little bit into the networking plan, because we want to actually start the process of being very deliberate about networking and breaking it down to make it maybe a little bit less intimidating. On page 5, you have a worksheet. And it's just a place for you to jot down ideas. Once again, you're not going to complete a soup to nuts networking plan. You'll see that there's a place there for your mission and vision and your brand statement. Those are probably not complete. That's okay. This is a template. This is a tool for future use. But what it does is it gives you a format to really think through how you're going to network and for what purpose. What are your goals and how is the networking going to get you to those goals? So your networking goals should be tied somehow to your overall mission and vision. So then what action or event are you going to participate in? Are you going to scour your LinkedIn network and try to find people in a certain field because you're looking to gain information about a certain new area of work that you want to move into? Or are you looking to maybe get a promotion in your current job, and who do you need to talk to for that? Is it a one-on-one, or do you need to take some classes, attend some conferences? Do you need to do some workshops? Or do you need to join a professional association? Obviously, there's one great one that we're working with right here. Are there others that are more in line with, let's say you want to do more public speaking? Do you want to join Toastmasters? There's a lot of opportunities here. So this gives you a place to really classify what are those goals you want to achieve. And I've left room for 3. You may have fewer, you may have more. 3 is usually a pretty manageable number. And then what are those networking actions or events that you need to pursue? When are they going to happen? If it's something that already exists, if it's a conference of some sort, a virtual event, or when are you going to make it happen? If it's just reaching out to somebody. And then what are your follow-up activities going to be? So this gives you a place to record some of this. So just kind of take a look at it. I'm going to go through a couple more tips on networking. And as ideas come to you, feel free to just jot them down. So let's talk a little bit about building your network. And we often think about building our network when we need help. And someone brought this up earlier as well. You know, when we need help with something, we think about who can we go to. But we also need to know where we can offer help. Networking is certainly a two-way street. And building the network isn't just about where you can get help, but it's where you can offer help and where you can start to build your brand as well in offering help. I'm someone who likes to consider myself a connector. If any one of you reach out to me on LinkedIn after this, I will connect with you. Just tell me you were in the workshop. I'll be happy to connect with you and even talk to you about any of these things. Some of you already did from yesterday's workshop. And I know that that's a place where I can offer help as well. I'm not looking for anything from you. I'm just here to help and to connect. But at some point, you know, maybe there is something that you can help me with. And that goes for anybody in your network. Know where you need the help, but know where you can offer the help. And then when it comes to events, whether they're in-person events, whether they're online events, what are the right ones for you? When I first started out as an independent contractor, started up my own business, I just said, oh my gosh, I need to attend the Association of Women Business Owners and the Association for Talent Development Professionals and the Association for Human Resource Professionals. And the list was a mile long and I was exhausted trying to attend all of these different events. And then it was in person too. And I was taking the time away from my family and I said, wait a minute, that's not part of my mission and vision and brand. So what am I doing wrong? And so I had to go back and really look at what are the events that are going to get me to where I need to be. And it was a little bit of trial and error. It was a little bit of throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. But after a while, you can whittle it down. Doing some research and talking to people helped me as well. So I used my time more to talk about these different events and, hey, did you attend it? What was it like? What did you get out of it? Versus being able to just, you know, go myself and assess it for myself, which was a lot of time. So sometimes talking to people who had been there helped. And sometimes starting small is fine. You know, large networking events are certainly one place to start, but they're not the only place. They can be very overwhelming, especially now in the virtual environment. So just, you know, think about the people you've met over the last few days as part of this event. Who have you connected with? How can you reach out to them? How can you reconnect with them? You know, do a virtual coffee over Zoom, do a virtual glass of wine over Zoom. I had a colleague once when we were in the office who used to meet people for chocolate and, you know, because not everybody has time to go for lunch or coffee, but she used to have a dish of chocolate on her desk and she would have somebody come by. They would each take a piece of chocolate and they would walk the halls eating their chocolate. Took about 15 minutes or so and they enjoyed a piece of chocolate and some conversation. It can be small. Online, everything's online, especially now we've moved to, you know, almost completely online. Really important to know what your brand is and how you're representing yourself. in your networks. For me, because I have a business of my own, it does span personal and professional. So I also try very hard to make sure that my personal Facebook page, you know, is in line with my overall brand. And if you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll see a lot about sessions I've facilitated or groups that I've connected and things like that. So it's really important to know and live your brand value statement. And it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to then connect with others. They can see your profile, they can see what you represent. Pictures are always helpful too, to see you in action and the job that you're doing. Read what other people share and comment on it. Add your insights, contribute your knowledge and your resources. These are ways to really cultivate that online network. A lot of folks think that it's just enough to send the LinkedIn and that's it, be done with it. And that may be okay in certain circumstances, but if there's somebody that you think can really help you in some way, or that you can help in some way, deepen that relationship, reach out to them. I've met a lot of people lately where we've connected on LinkedIn, and then we've had a 15 to 30-minute Zoom call just to get to know each other. How can I help you? How can you help me? Let's talk a little bit about what we each do and where we might be helpful to each other. And it does take time, but it reaps a lot of benefits. And you don't have to do this with each and every person, but figure out where those points might be that you want to cultivate a deeper relationship. It can be done online. And then just again, monitoring your brand, paying attention to your LinkedIn profile, make sure you have a LinkedIn profile, make sure you have a picture in your LinkedIn profile. Really critical, especially if you're looking for work at some point. Job recruiters overlook folks if they do not have a LinkedIn picture. Same with other social media. If you're on Facebook or Instagram and it's personal, sometimes those can be searched as well. And just make sure your brand is reflected somehow, even if it's that personal piece of it. But on LinkedIn, which is the sort of the pinnacle of professional networking online, making sure you do have a compelling heading and a complete summary and some keywords that people can search on for your accomplishments. Really important to have all of those things. Did I see something in the chat? Oh, just Sarah, okay. All right, so moving on to practice, 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 honing your skills. This doesn't have to be as scary or as time consuming as you might think. There's three key pieces here that I'm going to introduce to you. And then we'll go into a little bit more depth on one of them. And these are what's called keeping in loose touch, to stay connected and to add value. And I'll explain that in a minute. Effective listening, to truly understand others' needs and perspectives. And then again, using your brand statement, but not to the point that it feels overly rehearsed or unnatural. Do it in a way that's comfortable to you, and it will become comfortable to you once you figure out what it is and how you want to use it. This idea of keeping in loose touch is really important too. And this is where, you know, we struggle sometimes with, well, I had a conversation with someone, now what? Now what do I do? And it's actually the ideas.ted.com website. There is a veteran tech executive and self-described introvert, I might add, named Karen Wicker, who talks about how the key to overcome any fears about networking is to practice a little bit every day and to do it when you don't need specific help. She calls this keeping in loose touch. And you pop in now and again to your connections and acquaintances, both old and new, without any obligation to follow up or to even see each other in person. But if you do this when you're not feeling particularly needy, you start to see yourself as a giver, and other people start to see that in you as well. So you're not popping in to ask them for a job or for a lead or for a connection. You're popping in to maybe share an article or something that happened that made you think of them in a conversation that you had had. It's a good idea sometimes to keep notes, keep a spreadsheet, keep notes in some way, or in your contacts, keep notes on maybe it's the name of the person's children, or maybe they have a dog or a cat, or maybe you talked about a shared experience. anytime you can bring something up and say, you know, oh, how was that project you were working on? How's that going? Now they have an opportunity to talk about themselves. People love to talk about themselves, and they'll love you for it. So if you give them the opportunity, you kind of pop in, check in, see how they're doing, maybe offer them a little tidbit of something without coming across as needy, but just presenting some information that they might find helpful. Then it kind of gets you over your fear of seeming like you're asking too much. So that's the idea of keeping in loose touch. Effective listening. Now, hopefully you all practiced a little bit of this when you were in your triads just a few moments ago during the brand statement exercise, but I want to demonstrate how we sometimes get in our own way, even if we think we're listening effectively. And Sarah, I'm gonna call on you for a minute if you don't mind, and maybe
Sure.
could you tell me about a vacation you took at some point, you know, that was really cool, or just something memorable that you can share with me, some vacation you took?
Sure. The one that pops into my head first was I had just learned how to scuba dive in college. I had the extreme opportunity to be able to take a college credit for
cool.
scuba
Oh,
diving.
my best friend did that. She did a college course on scuba diving. She'd never done it before, and then she took it and she just absolutely fell in love with it. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then a good friend of mine was studying abroad in Australia, and so I got to go
I
the
went to
last 2 weeks
Australia.
he was
My
there.
husband and I went to Australia. Oh, we loved it. I got to hold a koala, and now my kids want to go. It's the coolest thing.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I would go back again in a second if I could.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, me too, for sure. I love it. I've totally derailed you, haven't I?
A little bit.
That was my intent. What happened here is that I asked Sarah to tell me something important to her, great trip. And she was really excited at first, and she was starting to talk about this. And I thought I was relating to her. You know, she's telling me about scuba, and I was like, oh yeah, and everything I said was true, by the way. You know, my best friend did do scuba, and it was awesome for her. And I did go to Australia with my husband, but all of a sudden, I made her story about me. I made it all about me, and you know, she was laughing because, you know, I didn't even know if she knew I was going to do this to her, but if it's someone you don't know as well, they might take offense to that. And all of a sudden, you know, they're not talking about themselves and feeling good. All of a sudden, you've made the story about you. And that's, you know, that's sort of something that gets in our way. We get in our way a lot because we try to relate. And we see ourselves as relating, and we're asking questions that are important to us, but maybe not to the other person. And the other thing that's really interesting is that we have what's called excess brain capacity. And those of you who were on my session yesterday know I'm a little bit of a geek about the neuroscience and brain. We speak, some of us speak faster than others. I grew up in New York, so I speak pretty fast, but we speak about 125 words a minute on average. Interestingly, we can actually process at about 800 to 1,000 words a minute. So as we're thinking, as we're listening to someone else, we can look like we're listening, but we're simultaneously thinking about other things. And our brains are racing faster than the words that are coming out of someone else's mouth. So Sarah's starting to talk about this, and I'm all of a sudden making all these connections about scuba and Australia and koalas and who the heck knows what else. And now she's derailed. She's not feeling so good about our conversation. So as it turns out, there are 3 levels of listening. And level 1 is what you just saw. It's all about me, personal listening. I am using my own capacity to filter the speaker's words through my own past experience, and even sometimes my future experience. I was like, oh, I want to go back to Australia too. I made it about me. It's no longer about Sarah. It's all about me. I'm playing my tapes in my head. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. I'm completely derailing the conversation. Now, it could be appropriate sometimes if I'm talking about myself in a conversation, let's say with a doctor. That's pretty appropriate to have an all about me conversation if I'm talking to a doctor and I need to be sharing my concerns. But generally speaking, when you're networking, you don't want to be using level 1. So now we move to levels 2 and 3, and there can be a time and a place for both of these as well. Level 2 is attentive speaking. It's all about us. We're using our excess brain capacity, and we're shutting down those tapes that are playing, and we're trying to be fully present and understanding the speaker, concentrating on the speaker's experience, trying to understand the speaker. We may ask a question or two, but we're really focused on the speaker, which is where we want to start in our networking. So that brings us both into the picture. But if we really want to be fully present, there's this idea of global speaking, which is reading between the lines for emotion as well. And this may be appropriate in some networking circumstances and not in others, but this is for listening to emotions, for emotions behind the words, and for what's not being said. This may be when you have a more personal connection with someone in the workplace, and you want to check for accuracy. This is where you're at in a networking situation is most likely level 2. You're shutting down your own tapes. You're not responding before the speaker's done. You're speaker focused, you're curious, you're intent, you're in the present. As your relationships get deeper, this level 3 global listening kicks in, where you do want to understand more about what makes people tick. You know, it sounds like you're stuck. I hear worry in your voice. Is that accurate? Tell me a little bit more about what you're going through. You're not going to do that with someone you first meet, but as your relationships deepen, your listening deepens and it becomes more global and very much about that person and their experience. But in the networking situation, you really want to make sure to avoid level 1 at all costs and really focus on level 2, attentive listening. What a counterexample. Is that, I see in the chat, was that the me talking over Sarah? Was that what you were getting at? Yeah. All right. Sometimes when I demonstrate it, it becomes very clear what's going on in our brains and how it really impedes a conversation. So our last step of these steps in our becoming a really effective networker is follow through. And this is where we sometimes forget. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you're learning to do, or if you're learning to network, or you're learning to swing a baseball bat or a golf club. If you have a coach and they're working with you on swinging that bat, swinging that tennis racket, swinging that golf club, they're going to emphasize the importance of follow through. It's not just hitting the ball that matters, it's how you continue your swing once you make contact. So the same thing applies in a job interview, in networking, in almost any work situation. Without purposeful follow through on your actions and your interactions with others, you will probably not reach your professional potential. So sometimes we finish a task and we think it's done because we've had an action and okay, check the box, it's done. But we underemphasize how powerful it is to continue developing and tracking and monitoring this, even after a relationship is set in place. In the book, Execution, The Discipline of Getting Things Done by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan, they say follow through is the cornerstone of execution. Every leader who's good at executing follows through religiously. Following through ensures that people are doing the things that they committed to do according to the agreed timetable. Now think back to your networking plan on page 5, the one that you're in the process of creating. There is a column for follow-up activities. What are you going to do to follow up on your networking interactions? So as you think about what you're going to do to network, you also want to be thinking about what comes next after you have that coffee, after you attend that conference or that workshop or that meeting. What are you going to do next? What is the follow through? So let me pause for a moment and let me get some of your questions. I see someone is very sorry for you, Sarah, because I totally hijacked the conversation. And
it's okay, I'm always happy to share more about Australia if anyone
and
wants.
I would love to talk with you offline about that, because I did love Australia and I would love to go back sometime. So, and I know there's parts we haven't been to that I'm sure I could learn a lot from you as well. I see a question here about how do you stay within level 2 listening without slipping back to level 1 and without seeming bored. You know, sometimes you probably will feel bored and it's going to show. You know, we all have a tell, and our nonverbals account for a lot more than our words do. So our words actually only account for about 7% of our meaning, whereas our nonverbals are gestures, our tone of voice and those sorts of things tend to convey about 35% of our meaning. And then everything else, whether we're smiling, whether we're making eye contact, whether we're nodding off and falling asleep, that accounts for the other 55%. So the nonverbals are really important. And so I think it is really, you know, key to know yourself, know your tells. If this is an important conversation, an important person for you to be networked with, you know, you need to be figure out how you're going to listen actively and stay focused. If anyone does meditation, I've struggled with it a little bit, but I know there's some meditation practices where you're thinking of the thoughts that are coming into your head as little flies that you swat away, and you physically think of a fly swatter, swatting them away, and that image helps you get your own thoughts and your objections and your negativity or your boredom out of your mind and helps you hone in and focus on the other person. That may work for you. If anyone has other suggestions of things that work for them, I'd love to hear them. Either raise your hand or put them in the chat. But it does take work. It does take effort to stay at that active listening, that involved listening, that attentive listening that you need when you're meeting someone in a networking situation. So other questions? On anything that we've covered, we did go through it fairly quickly, but we have about 15 more minutes if we want to address some questions, anything that's on your mind. And quiet your monkey brain, feel your flow instead of directing it. Yeah, I mean, this goes back to those of you who joined the session yesterday, and Simon Sinek mentioned it in his talk as well. You know, the limbic brain, the reptilian brain, whatever you want to call it, where that jumping, or that monkey brain, I love that imagery of sort of, you know, things just sort of jumping around. What do you do to quiet it? Can you take some breaths? Can you do the fly swatter of swatting away the thoughts? Feeling yourself in a little more flow of the conversation. It's not easy to do. It certainly isn't. But being aware of it is a good first step. How do you know if your professional mission vision matches your brand? I think you will know the answer to that question. There's no litmus test on that, but it has to feel right to you. And I think, you know, once you start looking at your goals and mapping out your goals, and you say, this isn't quite really where I want to be, then you know that there's a misalignment somewhere. It's either in your goal, or it's in your brand or your mission. It's probably not in your brand, because your brand is you. Your personal brand is who you are and what you represent. So maybe it's in an action you're taking or in a goal. So I think, you know, whatever feels comfortable to you for your mission, vision, and brand is the right answer. Where you really need to look at it is, are your goals aligning with that? And then you might need to adjust your goals. What else? What other questions do you have?
I would just toss in a thing that I have found effective in networking, because I find it very draining as not really an extroverted person, is I usually find a buddy to go with me if I can, or at least someone I know at least a little bit, if it's a big networking room type of thing, that can walk around with me. And that way I have someone else who can help flow the conversation if I hit a wall or I don't know what else to say, or if they hit a wall, or if I'm just not sure what else I should ask next. At least I have that energy of another person, if possible, to kind of bounce off of.
It's a great suggestion. Yeah, have your buddy, your wingman or wingwoman with you to help you, and they can introduce you to people. You can introduce them to people. It really helps the flow. The flow of 3 people can be a lot more smooth than the flow of 2 people sometimes. So that's a great suggestion if you're in that kind of a situation. Oh, that's interesting. You know, I have a question here about potential misalignment in professional and personal interests. For instance, becoming a good piano player, but also doing good in technical work. And honestly, I wouldn't call that a misalignment. I would say that you've got different goals for your personal and your professional life. But I bet if you think about how you live your life, and this is Amal, if I'm saying your name correctly, if you think a little bit about your mission and vision overall in your life and what you consider your personal brand to be, I bet you won't see a misalignment. You probably have values that apply just as well to being a good piano player as to doing well in your job doing technical work. One that comes to mind is precision. To be a good piano player, you do need to be precise. To do good technical work, you need to be precise. To me, that's perfect alignment. So different goals, that's fine. At the end of the day, who you are is who you are, and you can have a goal in your personal life to become a musician or a dancer or whatever it might be, and then in your professional life to do something completely different, and that's fine as long as it all contributes to who you are and what you want out of your life. If that makes sense, hopefully that makes sense. Any other questions? Okay, yes, thanks. Great. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'm more than happy to give people back 10 minutes of your day. I know some folks are on a very late time zone right now, so I know you're probably ready to go to sleep. But I will stay on for a few minutes as well. If there's folks who have questions, I know some people probably have already sent me LinkedIn requests. I'm more than happy to connect, and I will put my contact information up here as well. You are welcome to reach out anytime to me with any other questions that you might have. And I really appreciate your time today.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to just echo what Allison said. We're very happy to have you all part of the session today. And if you don't know, this is part of the OSA Career Lab series that we have available to our members. So if you're not a member of OSA and would like to become one, you can access lots of different types of professional development trainings that we offer, both in person when we can be in person and virtually. So take a moment, if you wouldn't mind, to just check out our website. You can check it out under member benefits. We'll also be sending a link out to just a very quick evaluation, probably in the next 12 to 24 hours to you. And as soon as the video is rendered through Zoom, we will be sending out that link to you all as well. So thanks very much for joining us today. And as Allison said, please feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have any questions. We hope you have a great rest of the meeting. Thanks, everyone.